but I will tell you, man, like listening to Belichick was a real treat inside that interview room, man. Like everything that he said, you're just hanging on to every single observation, every single take that he's got on the game, every take that he's got on NIL, what he's talking about the college game and the differences between what we see on Saturdays versus Sundays.
Welcome back or welcome to Y Option Season 2. I'm your host, Yogi Roth. As always, so much love to our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. There aren't many people in sports broadcasting that go as hard and as fast and literally across this beautiful country more than our guest today, Mike Yam, host of NFL Network, host at the CW, an amazing author, Fried Rice and Marinara, one of your favorite children's books you'll ever read. Also a TEDx speaker. He's got a great TED Talk. Check that out as well. But most importantly, a dear friend and was the first guest. And when we launched Y Option, it was Ashley Adamson, Mike Yam, Jim Thornby, and myself. And we went down memory lane. If you remember that episode, it still might be our most viewed episode. It's definitely up there. And he got really raw and really real about his time with the Pac-12 as a friend, as a colleague, and as someone who also had to transition out of the Pac-12 and find his way. Not only has found his way, but Mike is absolutely thriving. In addition to what I said, part of his work with the CW is also understanding the ACC. So Cal, Stanford fans, this episode is for you. College football fans who are just leaning into the Bill Belichick conversation, this episode is for you. It's an amazing lens and insight into what he saw as he was sitting across from Coach Belichick at ACC Media Days. Also, just overall around the league. Shout out to my Pitt Panthers. Hail to Pitt. We also take a deep dive into what he thinks we can expect from the Cougs and the Beavs this year. You know, last year we talked about how they were America's teams. Where do they sit today? He's going to be talking about them every single weekend on the CW, which is amazing because that set that he sits on, spoiler, is the same set he sat on for over a decade at the Pac-12 Network. So we go down memory lane a little bit there as well. And then, of course, he's living the NFL Network life. And if you followed the news here, ESPN has acquired NFL Media. So he's navigating that. And no surprise, he's showing up for his colleagues. So we dive into that. We have some fun. And of course, it's just great to be around Mike Yam. I'm got a little bit of stop here on my training camp tour. So make sure you go to yoption.com. I'm giving you details. We got it on social media. Was just at Penn State. I'll be at Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois this week as you listen to Mike Yam. And away it goes. We'll come on back to the West Coast, hit the 4 schools in the Big Ten, Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA. So in the meantime, listen to this one. It's a great conversation with someone who is truly family, one of my favorite people on planet Earth, presented by our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. Here's today's guest, Mike Yam. All right, as mentioned, here's Mike Yam, one of my dearest friends in the industry. I'm trying to come up with a way that you would bring a guest in. Like Mike would always say, when they're off air about to bring him in, hey coach, nothing you can't handle here.
Well,
and then they go 3, 2, 1. So Mike, nothing you can't handle here. 3, 2, 1. Give me a sense about life, the NFL, CW, SiriusXM, my favorite children's book, Fried Rice and Marinara, also TED Talk speaker, but most importantly, dear friend, lifelong colleague, even though we only did a decade or so together, but lifelong brother. Yeah. How we living? How you doing? Great to be back. Come on. Here we go.
Dude, let's go. First of all, there's so many tentacles here. You said 30 minutes. Can we even go longer than this? I mean, come on, man. We got to go down memory lane and the whole thing.
Thornby's on us. He's in my ear, counting down.
What people don't see is Thornby starts, he's hey, I'm going to start this thing up. And on your screen, it's 5, 4. And I just start giggling. And then I see it in your face. It's just the flashbacks to back in the day. Dude, it is awesome, man. And look, I get the newsletter. I see the interviews. I see all these Big Ten coaches now that are popping on. I see you traveling. You got Penn State. You're doing the whole deal. I was catching up with your former squad in Pitt because I was at ACC Media Days. I mean, this has been this is the time. And you know better than anyone. And I feel like I'm living the Yogi Roth life from years ago, because we used to do the training camp tour and we used to all these different campuses. But I got to tell you, man, you go from the college stuff to the NFL thing. I had texted our other mutual really good friend, Max Brown, and I said, Max, this a couple weeks ago before I was in Charlotte for ACC Media Days, I'm yo, man, are you prepped up for this? Are you going? Because I got to tell you, like keeping up with roster movement alone this is unreal. Like everyone hears about the portal, they hear about NIL. To see it firsthand, and you know this, man, because you like live, eat, and breathe this stuff. It is insane to see some of the things that we're seeing in college football right
I love it. All right, so let's set a little framework for today. We are going to talk ACC
now. Okay,
Media Days because I want to learn about Belichick. We're going to talk about
awesome.
my Panthers, but also like Cal and Stanford. Like they're still on your training camp tour. Like they're still part of your life. I want to talk about the NFL,
Yeah,
of course, and then a couple ancillary things here at the end, and of course the Pac-12 because you're going to be working with the CW again. You're back as the host, pre,
yeah,
half, post game, killing it. I love what you guys have done, and Michael Molinari has led, along of
he's
course
awesome.
with the commissioner Teresa Gould. So let's just start, which to me is still wild to think of like two schools, and I always think of Cal. I could look out of their beautiful stadium and see the Pacific Ocean, and they're playing in the Atlantic Coast Conference for the second year. So like we're over the initial
Yeah,
like
yeah.
awkwardness. They played at Pitt last year, lost
Well,
a tough one.
no.
Uh, what was it like at Media Days, seeing those two schools in particular, Cal, Stanford with an interim, but Frank Reich is just going to be there for the
It's
season,
crazy.
etc.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. First of all, can I just take you back 2 years ago? So I get hired by the
Please.
CW, and they say, "Hey, like, you'll head to Charlotte for ACC Media Days." I'm like, "Great." You land, and I go, "Oh my god!" Like, the cross country thing is a real thing, and they do it back to back years. I don't know if they did it previously at this hotel, but they put like this wrap around like everything. Like ACC kind of owns the entire hotel. Your key cards have like all the school logos, the elevators. It's they do a nice job with it. But when I get there and I see last year ACC, I see the banners and I see Cal and Stanford. Like I'm excited because it's home, right? Like I start thinking about the decade, with the league, and I get excited, but I'm like, this looks weird. You said, we're over the awkwardness. Like we're not, man, because I got there and it's still weird, to see some of that
Mm.
stuff. It's nice though when you do get to see some of these coaches. So like Wilcox comes in, and it's kind of awesome. But I don't know if even the schools on both sides, East Coast and West Coast, have really gotten used to this because it's a major topic of conversation. I did a bunch of those interviews. Coaches come in, players come in, and I think the players, it's less of a deal for them because you remember what it was like to be 20 and 21. Like dude, you like hop out of bed and you're
Just
like
like
ready to
yesterday.
go. Yeah, no, not for me. I mean, it's like snap, crackle, pop with the knees, ankles, and back every morning when I get up. It just feels different. But this is a microcosm of it. Wilcox and company, like they got in like super, super late because of them missing like a connection. I mean, just think about it in those terms, right?
Whoa, no private? They didn't fly private?
So yeah, I don't want to go there.
Come on.
I'm not. Look, State University. I don't know what's going on there. We got to figure that out. But you could see like Coach was like legit tired. Like he'd never tell you, but just sort of getting to know him a little bit, you kind of see it on his face. So there's that aspect. To see Frank Reich come into the room now, the ACC's got 3 former NFL head coaches that are going to be on their sidelines. I know you touched on Belichick, which is awesome. Coach O'Brien, obviously, and then Coach Reich. But you can see there's like a giddiness around. Andrew Luck was there, obviously as the GM. Ron Rivera, I don't think I saw him. I don't know if he made the trip on the Cal side, but the point is like Yogi's like this NFL influence. You used to say this all the time when I worked with you. Like the high school game, helped transform a little bit when we saw on the college side, and then the college game helped transform what we were seeing on the NFL side. It starts at the bottom and it does work its way up, as opposed to NFL down to college, down to sort of like that high school level. And I think you're now sort of seeing this influence where it's starting to like reverse a little bit. Like Frank Reich specifically was so jacked up and excited to be able to talk about college kids, and I always worry about that. And I think the reason why I worry about this, and I feel like I'm rambling here, Yokes, but you know this because you were on SC staff, like this recruiting trail, but it's so different nowadays where coaches are constantly recruiting. But I think in the world of like NIL and kids able to make money, it becomes less about like some of like the recruiting aspects that are a little bit of a challenge. Like of course these coaches are recruiting these guys and they have to on a regular basis, but I do think like the amateur label sort of being removed here, I think opens the door for, I think, these jobs being a little bit more attractive for former NFL coaches.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think a year ago, a big narrative was like, coaches can't call plays. Head coaches can't call plays. They're doing too much. I've always pushed back on that a little bit and will again because of the GM. Like Andrew Luck,
Totally.
every GM's job description is a little different, but
Totally.
ultimately the GM should be selecting the players, navigating and managing the roster, running recruiting. They've got a whole staff for that. So the head coach, I think now can be more ball than definitely the last 3 years when you look at coming out of COVID into the NIL era. So did you feel that with those NFL coaches, like notably Frank Reich in a very unique circumstance that we've seen in our tenures in college football?
Yeah, I think there's no question that is the case, especially as it pertains to Stanford. Like Reich's coming in there not to build this program and think about high school recruits. And I know he's in those conversations and I talked to him about it, but I think you hit the nail on the head. This is a guy who wants to go out there and coach ball. I'd asked him, I was like, hey, do you watch a lot of the guys from last year? I was like, yeah, a little bit, but he's like, honestly, I think there was like press conference and the next day he was out on the practice field with these guys. He's like, I'm just getting a roster, trying to learn all these dudes. But I think you touch on something that's really interesting because the GM jobs are very different depending on the school and I would say the sport. So like Andrew Luck, you could tell talking to these players is very much in the weeds on the roster, the recruitment, probably some of the scheme as well. I think it became pretty clear he was talking to Frank Wright about what they want to do offensively and some of the personnel. But I take it a step further, like Steph Curry, Shaq, like on the basketball side. I haven't really flushed this through. I'll flush it out with you here. But Steph Curry's like in the league, right? Like Shaq doing like that's like more figurehead and hey, can we hop on a quick call or something? And it's just to be associated with their respective schools. I think on the football side, Rivera, like talking to some of the kids at Cal, like Ron's in the weeds, man. Like there's that aspect of that I candidly I didn't think we'd be talking about when some of these announcements for former athletes, star guys were going back to their universities and taking these GM roles.
It's interesting. Okay, I'm going to hit you with a theory that has not floated yet, I don't think. But here's my theory on Stanford. Number one, I think it's more attractive than people give it credit for. I hope with this new athletic director, they're going to decide to be what they could be, which is they poured into football financially. They'll have they might have the most unique offering in all of college football. Like they should be leading the way in the NIL era if they could allow transfers in, et cetera. Is there a world where you co-sign on this concept of, well, Andrew Luck is the GM now, and I think the GM job is more taxing than the head coaching job. There is no time off. Like you're recruiting visits all of June. You are planning for the season. Like there is a lot to do there that I'm sure he knows, and so much more than you even signed up for, right? Like they had a lot of things to navigate off the field since he became the GM. What world does Andrew Luck just decide, you know what? I'm just going to be the head coach. I'm going to be the true figurehead. He knows the X's and O's. He knows the game as well as you could argue anyone in college football right now. He's going to, in this era, we hope, Stanford adds the resources that will allow them to staff like the big dogs in major college football, pay like the big dogs in college football. And we all know what it's like to walk that campus. Like, is there a world where all of a sudden you can get premier $2 million a year offensive coordinator, $2 million a year defensive coordinator, pay Andrew Luck 4 or 5 or whatever it is, and let him run the thing? Because he is the face of it as the GM. And you've heard me say this many times. I think college football, the face of every team is the head coach. In the NFL, where you primarily work, the face of the team primarily is the quarterback.
Sure.
So I look at Stanford and I just say, let's just make Andrew the head coach. Might give him the best shot.
I don't disagree. The only pushback that I would have to you is like, doesn't he have more value as a GM than a head coach to the school?
I don't know. Like if I'm a parent, do I want my son to play for Andrew Luck or be selected by Andrew Luck? I get it. Like he could still develop and will still be involved. I don't know. I just wonder, like, I just think at Stanford, we got Andrew Luck. He's going to figure it out. And I think that's a lot to put on one person who has not ever worked in college football ever, other than like playing in it and thriving as a player. And I just wonder, like, I think of Greg Popovich, right? He was GM of the Spurs.
Sure.
And then was like, I'll be the head coach. So it's no one's even mentioned it. He's never mentioned it. No one's even brought it up. But I think about it all of the time. I'm like, what is the best move for them? If he wanted it, could it be him as the head coach?
Yeah, Bob Hill is shaking his head right now. And that's like the great trivia question for, you mentioned Pop and the Spurs. Before Pop took over, it was Bob Hill that was waiting for Tim Duncan to get drafted and change the fortunes of a franchise. But besides the point, The only thing that I would say on the Luck thing, because I think you make a really good point. I feel like his value is higher as a GM, because I do think there's to be the face and the figurehead and not necessarily worry about the X's and O's. And it's not to say that he can't coach. I just wonder if like that team doesn't have success. Like he's a GM, like there's 1 degree, 1 layer removed from
Fair.
Luck, where you almost put him in a bad spot if they don't win. And then what's the timeline that's there? Like I think even now the leash is as long as it wants because it's Andrew Luck, right? And it's Stanford. But I do think you make a compelling point. I had said this to Frank Reich off air, and one of our buds, and I got to work with him at NFL Network for a little bit, and I know he's back in the league. But David Shaw, like what he did, remember, like David, we'd spend time on campus, and David would be like, Yogs, on this campus, I'm doing like the worst David Shaw impression. But the point is, he would say something to the effect of, you know how special this place is. You'll have like Nobel, Nobel Prize winners on this campus. You'll have like, the CEOs and the founders of like these major Fortune 500 companies that are out here. It's like dudes on campus, ladies on campus that are just changing the world. And then, oh yeah, like you have like a football player who could be like a number 1 overall pick. Like there's just such diverse skill set, Condoleezza Rice, the whole thing. And I said that to Frank. I was like, hey, like, are you having a Stanford moment? Have you had that yet on campus? And he like paused and he smiled. And he's like, well, like I got to meet Condoleezza Rice and that was pretty cool. And he started like tell me a little bit about that interaction. So I think when you bring up the uniqueness of that university, what they can offer, candidly, like that's something that you could have made that argument for years, like, a couple decades of how special that place is. And like, there's a lot of great campuses in this country, and that place is certainly unique for a lot, but they need to decide, Yogs, like, are we in legitimately? Are we in? And if we are, that is a high level of investment, financial investment to get this thing done. And you and I, when we were, you're obviously still covering these teams, and I'm back in, but there was a time when we were together at Pac-12 Network and coordinators were making a fraction of what the coordinators in the SEC and the Big Ten were making. It's hard. And I know people will say, well, is that really a big deal? Yeah, it's a big deal. Like you want the top talent on your campus. And I'm not just talking about the players, but the coaching staff, the development aspect of all of this stuff is a major factor here. And I think Stanford has the largest endowment in the country, like probably a top 2 or 3 international. You took all the schools worldwide, like it's billions of dollars. It's like a $40 billion endowment. And yet COVID happens and they're cutting sports, right? Like this is like the Olympic training ground, so to speak. So I think I think that university specifically needs to decide, like, are we in? And I think some of the decisions that are now being made, you're seeing like a real investment. And I think it starts obviously with Andrew, Luck being at the helm here, trying to guide the ship.
Yeah, we could talk about this one forever. Let's stay in the ACC with a little West Coast flair.
Let's go.
Miller Moss, you texted me, you're hanging out with him. Former starting quarterback at USC, former Elite 11 finalist from here in Southern California. We know the transfer thing, as you referenced, that's just part of daily life. It seems like the Louisville transfer thing at quarterback, it was Tyler Shuck, who now you cover. He's a member of the Saints and competing down there. We'll see how that goes, right? There's a nice little competition with guys that we all have grown to love over the course of our tenure in college football. But I'm curious, Miller's lens on the game, what have you noticed? Is it a sense of urgency, a maturation, like anything that stand out for you from him?
Okay, so before we talk about Miller Moss, can I just, I think it's important to know, like if you're watching this podcast, if you get the Y Option newsletter, like Yogs is dialed in. Can I just tell you, like, it's even more than you possibly can think. I'm telling you, the tentacles of Yogi, it's like crazy. Like you head into these rooms and your name pops up all the time. I'm at, you knew I was going to Vikings camp. It's like, Kevin O'Connell, like you were texting about Byron Murphy, who I saw after practice, who we had when he was at Washington, like just the amount of guys. And then the quarterback circles alone, because of your extensive work with Elite 11 and Miller obviously being one of those dudes. It's fascinating because I dropped your name because of course I'm going to use you as like as an icebreaker with some of these guys that I don't know. Like, what are we doing here? A bad job by me if I don't. So the kid lights up and he's just like ready to roll. So there is like a professionalism. And I don't know if it's because of the experience, it's because of the age, it's because of SC, like whatever the case may be. There's other quarterbacks who step into the room that play for big programs, national profile, potentially could push for an ACC championship, that don't have the same type of command. And I'm not saying like you need that in order to ball out. Like, you know this, man. You get onto the field, like your personality, sure, it matters, but like, do the guys follow you? And sometimes it's different types of leadership, right? Like Tim Duncan was the rah-rah guy, second Tim Duncan reference on this podcast. But and we're supposed to be talking about college football. But the point is, for Miller specifically, I actually asked him, hey, like, did you and Tyler communicate? Tyler Shuck was in college for 17 years. Social security check was in the mail for him, and now all of a sudden he's getting an NFL game check when the season rolls along, and maybe as their QB1. And he had talked about that relationship. But I think what was so attractive for Miller, you go back to that bowl game, and they torched Louisville. It was like video game numbers. It was like 300 some odd yards, like 6 touchdowns. I mean, it was like crazy. And I actually talked to Jeff Brom about that. I'm like, yo, did you bring that up? And I embarrassed Miller because Coach even said, he's like, hey, it came up like a little bit, but Miller's girlfriend brought it up to me and was like kind of giving it to me a little bit. So I thought that was funny. And I asked Miller Moss about it. And he was like, yeah. And he kind of like turned a weird shade of red, talking about that particular moment. But there is like an it factor that's there. There's certainly an attractiveness in one of the more high profile offenses. And not to mention, this is a team that legitimately can make a run, Yokes. I mean, I think there's some questions on the defensive side for them, but they have enough pieces offensively to really push in this conference. Probably preseason top 25 squad legitimately. And I think, if Miller is able to fill in the void of Tyler Shuck, like, why not this team in that conference, which I wouldn't say is wide open. I think it's a small subsection of teams that can go and win it, but Louisville for sure is in that mix.
With the Fuel Forward app, the more discounts you stack, the more you save.
Feels good to save. I know, right?
How low can you go?
Okay, so thinking about being in the mix, you've always been one who can thrive in the mix around elite performers, big-time names, right? Whether it was at ESPN, whether it was the Pac-12, of course, in the National Football League at NFL Network. What was it like when Belichick walked in? And is that a different level? Like everybody's got a level, and then they're like when Brady walks in and I'm at like a Fox meeting, it's like, whoa, like you feel a little bit of the it factor.
Totally.
Was that the way with Bill Belichick, especially after like just a unique summer of news coverage around him and his personal life?
Dude, you hit the nail on the head, man. Belichick walks into a room, it just feels different. There's a silence that's there. And I don't know if it's the same, because I've been around like very high profile athletes, as of you, like you interview them. There's some guys where it just feels different in the room. I remember covering Warriors Cavaliers NBA finals. I'm at the practice facility in the Bay Area, and Cavs are about to hit the floor. LeBron walks in, Jim's silent, dude. Like, you can feel it. And I know it's hard to explain that to someone, but trust me, man, you can feel LeBron in the room. It's just different. Belichick, we're in this interview room, and it's just different. At one point, and just to set this up here, so typically at Media Days for any of these conferences, every network, radio station, TV station, they get like a room, and then it's players who get like 10 minutes per player, whatever the case may be. And so you spend some time, and the way we were doing it at the CW, I was in one chair, coach or player is sitting across from me like 5 feet away, and you just sort of pepper them with questions and do the whole thing. Belichick walks in, and actually before Belichick walks in, I go to grab a glass of water. And I wasn't doing like the one interview that was going on. I'm in the hallway, and I see Belichick like on the other side of this hallway. And there's players from all these teams rolling up to him. And that alone is just different. Like, that doesn't happen. Usually it's an opposing coach that walks up to a player, hey man, like, fan of your work or whatever, like, stay healthy, whatever the words of encouragement are. I'm telling you, players are making it a point to beeline it to Belichick. And here's the best part. Bill knows all of these dudes. Like, and you would say, well, shouldn't he know these guys? Like, these are the best guys in the conference. Guys, like, he wasn't coaching in this league last year, but he's already aware of all these players to the point. And here's what was really interesting. He's talking to one player in particular, and he's like, hey, I was watching your tape from a few years ago, because I actually thought you might be playing for us in New England. So like, it goes to show you like how this dude operates, and like this football 24/7. And it's not every guy is like that, but I got to tell you, even when he sits in the chair, every coach, and you, Yogs, you know this from working with coaches, covering these guys, being in the meeting rooms, pre-games before some of the games that you're calling. Every coach has a different personality. Bill's ball. Like, Bill is business and Bill is ball. But everything that he says, you're hanging on to every single word. And that's unique. That is not every single coach. Some coaches come in and you go, I get why players want to go to him. I get why he crushes it in recruiting. I understand why this dude is well thought of as an X's and O's guy. I understand why this guy, whatever their like core, their plus one skill is as a coach. Bill's ball. Like, there's one or two guys that I felt like could probably check every single box, like the recruiting aspect, they care about the players, the results. Like, actually, I would say Chris Peterson, who probably better than most. Like, Chris to me is like one of those dudes where if you spend time with him, like, the results speak for themselves, right? Like, we saw that when he was at Boise and certainly at Washington. Like, you win, so you go, oh, okay, like there's credibility there. But then you go, oh, okay, you get to know the dude, and you go, oh, actually, like, he actually gives a damn about his players. And I know that sounds weird, but I'm telling you, like, the guy actually cared about his guys. And every team will say that. They'll think, football, family, the whole thing. Or they got like, their trigger words and the buzzwords that are out there. But I will tell you, man, like, listening to Belichick was a real treat inside that interview room, man. Like, everything that he said, you're just hanging on to every single observation, every single take that he's got on the game, every take that he's got on NIL, what he's talking about the college game and the differences between what we see on Saturdays versus Sundays. I think the country is excited about to see what Carolina is going to be. But I think after seeing him and experiencing him in person a little bit, I'm so jacked up for Carolina football, man. It's gonna be awesome.
It is. All right, one quick follow-up to that, and then we'll move on. I think when I've been around those that I think have the it factor, right?
Sure.
And by that, I mean, when they walk into the room, you feel their presence and they make everybody better, whether it's on their team, on the other side of the camera lens, that person interviewing them. Also, I think, like, you feel like a sense of normalcy. You're like, oh, dude, he's just kind of like a great guy to hang with. And everyone I know that is close with Coach Belichick, they reference like how cool he is to be around. So I'm wondering, like, walking into that interview with him and then walking out of the interview, outside of what you just said of his care factor and obviously his intellect around the craft, what other thing did maybe like get proven to you when he left and you went and talked to your colleague? Like, what might have you said?
So there's two things that resonate when you ask that question, because you're 100% right. Because I think I just framed Coach as like all ball, because he is, but there's these moments where it's not. Like, there's these moments of personality, because he has it. Like, he's not dull, right? Like, I know there's the press conferences with the one word answers. Like, that's a little bit of like a shtick kind of thing. I was calling the East West Shrine game last year, but 2 or 3 years ago, I'm blanking. I don't even know the day of the week at this point because we're coming off a training camp. But a couple of years ago, the NFL for this game, they would rotate coaching staffs and they'd level up different people. And then so I think it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the Patriots staff was responsible for one of the teams. And you talk to a lot of the guys that were on that Patriots staff that all got leveled up for that particular game. And I would say, hey, what's it like for the kids when Bill walks into the room? So I would watch Bill on practice, and he'd roam everywhere, and he'd roll up to a player, and I'm telling you, because like they're all ears, like, and like, I don't know why I'm leaning back from the table and like being dramatic about this, but I'm telling you, dude, like every player, if Bill comes over to you, they're willing to do anything for Coach Belichick. Like, hey, what do you got for me? And they're soaking in this information. One of the coaches said, hey, Bill came into one of the meeting rooms, place goes dead silent, and every player is hanging on to every single one of those words. But he'll crack like a subtle joke. And even at ACC Media Days a couple weeks ago, off air, someone had said something like was cracking a joke when he was out with those players. Like, it was the same thing. Like, there's this personality that he has. It's almost like, I don't want to say hidden, but I think we don't know about it because we don't get to see it. And there's no question those were some of those moments. And Yogs, you know this, man, because you've been on the recruiting trail. You deal with these kids now that are getting these NIL deals. You actually need some of that stuff with these players. And I think there's going to be a level of time, and I don't know how long Belichick's going to do it for. He's going to be able to point to the rings, to Brady, to the success and all those things. But over time, like, you almost age out of that. Like, some of these kids are going to be so young. If he's doing this for multiple years, like, people will know the name. But like, these kids are so young. Already, it's just a factor of like, he's going to need to go into that bag of tricks, I think, to be able to get some players and convince them, really to go and play for him down at Chapel Hill.
Okay, can't wait. We'll tap back into that one mid-season, kind of see where it's at. Of course, we'll be watching you on the CW. So let's transition to the Pac-12, the conference where we met and we watched in many different iterations. Last year, you and Ashley and Jim Thornby, it was the first episode here at Y Option. It was the four of us, and it was like kind of memory lane. It was a launching point. It was an emotional, powerful conversation. It was so good. We had 2 episodes, right? There's part 1 and part 2. But part of that I think really resonated, and I think if you didn't see it, I hope you felt the amount of love and admiration that came through to you from our listeners and our community as you detail what it was like to leave the Pac-12 Network. Well, if I could have been like NFL Films, I would have had you mic'd up, multiple angles as you walked into the San Ramon facility, which is the Pac-12 headquarters for better or worse. Like basically that's what it is. And that's where the studios are. That's where they produce a bunch of games. Like it's an amazing setup, but it's a place, not physically, but it's a place where you worked.
Yeah.
You walked in there and sat in probably the same chair.
Same chair, same desk.
Same chair, same desk, right? Different address. What was that like for you to walk into that? Because we all felt how much it hurt. It wasn't,
dude.
You weren't mad. You were hurt after all that went down. You shared that, and I'd recommend everybody go back. We'll link it in this podcast as well. Listen to Mike in that conversation. What was it like to go do that? Because now you're running into year 2, representing the Pac-12 that now doesn't just have 2 teams. Like they got a fully formed league that will come out this time next year.
Okay, so I appreciate this because you described it correctly. Like it was like a lot of hurt that was there, and it was weird last year. So you go to San Ramon. I have actually had not been to the San Ramon facility. It was still in San Francisco, like COVID. I still remember, like as you're bringing this up, I remember going to the studios and packing up all of my stuff and like my suits and loading them into the car, and that was not a good experience. That was not fun. Yeah, that was pretty brutal. But you go to San Ramon and it's we literally used the same exact set. They picked the set up from San Francisco and they brought it to San Ramon and like reconstructed it. Same desk, same chair, same monitors, that we have like built into the desk. I mean, the walls were the same exact ones, when we launched the network, we actually won an award. Our set guys did, because they were using real California redwood. That redwood still lasts, still part of the set. It's like, it was weird to me. And I'll never forget the first time Mike Molinari was with me, and was kind enough to bring me back for work with the CW and be back in this conference. And I'll always be insanely grateful for him for the opportunity, and Teresa as well, because I know she had signed off on all this stuff. But I remember walking out onto the set with Mike for the first time, and like it kind of hit me a little bit. Dude, it's like the same cameras. Like you just kind of know. You're there for like a decade, right? Like you just kind of and Thornby knows as he's producing this. Like everything is so familiar to you. When we launched the network in 2012, I remember going out to the set for the very first time. And I know this is going to sound like cheesy, but I still think about this because I was leaving ESPN at the time, and that was, I did like a Sports Center on a Saturday. I flew out on Sunday, and then on Monday I was in our HR meeting at Pac-12 Network, and then we launched the thing on a Wednesday. But I remember the first time I was out on the set, I was by myself. Like I walked out, and I remember thinking to myself, like, hey, this is like the new home. Like this is my new home. And I just remember feeling, I was excited. I was definitely excited, and like felt ridiculously fortunate that I was going to be able to get this opportunity. And I remember putting my hand on the desk, and I was like, oh my God, like this is like, I'm going to be sitting here for however long. Right. And this is going to be home. And it was, and we had like a blast, and the memories and the fun times, the green, like the whole thing. I mean, it was like the best professional experience, the autonomy. It's like, how many times did we just do what we wanted to do on the shows? Like just go like that. Like you don't like, I don't want to like speak. I'll just say it. Like, I don't get that at NFL. I find it hard to believe you're getting that where you are. Like it just doesn't happen at networks. Like that's just not how they operate. But we had so much autonomy, and I miss that. And last year I get to the CW set. I didn't do, like, I know I thought it when I walked onto the set with Molinari, but I remember like sitting, like standing up. It's like one step onto the ledge. And I remember putting my hand on on the desk, and there's like scratches everywhere because it's like over 10 years old, the desk. And I remember thinking to the moment back in 2012 when I put my hand on the desk, and I thought, I was like, oh my god, this is going to be home. So it was really surreal, man. Like even the monitors, the whole thing. And like I said, I don't want to sound cheesy and make this sound like a cheesy story, but that was like legitimately what was going through my head. And it was like a very weird experience, but super happy, man. I mean, to even get to do some stuff in this league, knowing what it's going to look like, next year and what we're going to have this season, it's pretty awesome, man. And like there's like a sense of pride, right? Like you want the Beavs to ball out, you like want the Cougs to do really well, and then you still the football communities, man, are so small. And people don't realize this. Like I still look at Saturday football and Sunday football as two different sports. Like the games, I know we call it football, but and Yogi, this, man, like it's just different. There's so much nuance there that makes the NFL game and the college game different. But at the same time, like the people are still involved. Like I remember my first real assignment. I say real, but like it's actually what got me to NFL Network down at headquarters. They had called me to cover the NFL draft, and I was living in the Bay still. The Niners had the third pick. They take Trey Lance. And I remember getting the phone call, and they're like, hey, you're in the Bay. Can you cover the Niners? I'm like, yeah, of course. I could be a reporter. I'm like, dude, like, I hang up the phone. Yogi, and you know this, man. Like, I haven't been a reporter. Like, I'm legitimately like the luckiest broadcaster you'll ever meet. Like, I just did studio stuff. Like, I kind of fell into it. I got these great roles. I got to host. So that whole premise was foreign to me. But I said yes because you just say yes to these opportunities. And I remember freaking the F out. I was like, I don't have contacts at this organization. I don't know who I'm going to call. Like, what am I going to do? And then I just paused and I was like, wait a second. Like, I know a bunch of college folks. And then all of a sudden you just pick up the phone and it's like, well, dude, I know Ronnie Lott. And then Ronnie's like, hey, do you know Jeff Garcia? Well, I know of him. And then he's like, yeah, just call him. So you're getting these numbers. Leinart was one of our is one of our buds. Leinert's covering the college game. I'm like, yo, give me your assessment on some of these quarterbacks. So you're able to like piece everything together. And then it occurred to me, I'm like, oh my God, for as little experience as I had as a reporter or the insider, so to speak, of like the takes from and the contacts of the teams, I'm like, dude, the football community is small, man. And everyone was willing to help. And I'll always be really grateful for that.
Wow. I mean, I had the chills a few times in that dialogue. And you're right. I thought last year that the Cougs and Beavs were America's team. Everybody's rooting for them.
Totally.
I don't know if that's the case this year because like we're a year removed.
Sure.
But I don't think there's a football fan that isn't going to root for those two schools if they are aware of the history of the last 36 months or so when it came to those two schools. I can't wait to watch.
Hey, by the way, real quick on this, the Beavs need some damn explosive plays, all right? Like for them to get everyone to start rooting for them because that was a little
Malik
bit.
Murphy, let's go.
Yeah, man. Like we're gonna have to figure this stuff out. And I did see Jake Dickert, by the way, very briefly in Charlotte, and I can tell that there was like this emotional attachment that he still had for Washington State. I don't know if that's like a faux pas, if I'm allowed to say that, because I don't know how Cougs fans are feeling, and probably not great about how that all shaked out. But I will say, like, I think Coach was perfect for that team, that school in those moments. Things happen, but you even in like a very short conversation, I could feel the connection that he still has with that team and how much he still wants it to go well for him. So hopefully that's the case this upcoming season. That was the last thing. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I like
there,
that. No, I love that. And of course, Wake Forest goes to Oregon State, which will be an amazing game. And I believe that's a CW game. So Ted Robinson will be all over that one, which is great for everybody because he is an absolute pro in every respect. With that said, do you have a thought on the Cougs and the Beavs? You just referenced Oregon State, more explosive plays. Both are going to have new quarterbacks. Obviously, Jimmy Rogers is a new coach, but a rock star. Like everywhere I turn in the Big Ten, I see his fingerprints, whether it's the quarterback at Iowa, whether it's an offensive coordinator at Northwestern. Like you just see the success that he had. I'm curious for you, as we are about halfway through training camp here, your thoughts on what these two teams need to do in their final year of not being a part of like a fully formed, full member conference.
Yeah, like these are really big opportunities for these two schools in particular, because if you think back to the brands before the breakup of the league, Oregon State and Washington State, here's like the hard truth and reality. We're not the first schools that you would mention in this league. And now all of a sudden, these two programs are the flag bearers for the conference. And there is pressure, I think, for both of these programs to figure it out and figure it out quickly, especially when you talk about some of the teams that are coming in that, quite frankly, will be able to compete with those two schools. Now, maybe not all of them at that level, but I think there's more than a few that I'd say, ooh, like if they match up on a Saturday, that's not a gimme, man. Oregon State's winning that game. It's not a gimme that Washington State's winning that game. I think the beauty that both of these schools have at their disposal is the new rules and the new landscape. And if they're able to take advantage of it, you and I started this conversation talking about Stanford and this commitment. Does Oregon State and Washington State, are they truly going to commit for their programs to be great? And I think the best part about, there's some things I don't love about the state of college athletics right now, but to play within the rules, Oregon State and Washington State can figure this out and be really good really quickly. It was funny. I remember talking with you before last season, and you actually felt like Washington State was going to be a really good football team. You explained to me why. We were going through the rosters, the whole thing, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, there was a stretch on the CW. We were talking about them like, hey, like let's talk about this team as a playoff squad. And you know, material, like, how many other guys were more entertaining than him? I mean, I sort of flash back to, you know, how much love we would have been giving him on Pac-12 Network. I mean, like, my God, like we would have been loving this dude up. But I think as the proof is in the pudding, right? A couple years ago, they get Cam Ward there. Cam obviously goes to Miami. He's the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Material is obviously a well thought of, and I think he's going to ball out obviously this season. You can get dudes to go to Pullman and play. Like, that's clear. I think for anyone who's been to Oregon State's campus, it was truly one of my favorite places to be. I used to joke all the time. It would remind me of home. Like, our team knows, like, if I ended up in Corvallis and was walking around before a show, I would get homesick and I would call my mom, because in the fall with the leaves changing, like we, you know, especially here in LA, like we don't really have that type of thing. And in the Bay, we didn't have that. There's an environment that a certain profile of player can really flourish in. And when you talk about this upcoming season, Yogs, I think both of these programs, there's pressure to win. There's always pressure to win, but I think there's pressure to win to carry momentum into 2 seasons from now when this league is whole again. And we're talking about really competitive games, and they have the strategic advantage of being Pac-12 teams that have been here for a really long period of time. And how do you navigate that? You've had better resources, presumably, than some of these teams that are popping in. You got to be able to capitalize, and you need to extend that lead.
Amen. Two follow-ups to that. One, I love that Corvallis is basically like walking the halls of Bergen Catholic. So I'll remember that every time I go there
For
now.
sure.
Where Mike Yam and Matt Lavecchio once adorned those halls, which I remember Matt from the 1999-2000 recruiting class. Google that if you get absolutely bored in your life. Second thing is, I believe this to be true. In the structure of the CFP, there's going to be a world where I believe the Pac-12 will be the 5th strongest conference.
Yeah.
Once it regroups a year from now. And I don't think it's a question. And I believe as long as whoever wins that league has a better record than 8-4 heading into the conference championship game, I think it's going to be a relative AQ, if not like an almost near certainty automatic qualifier, pending the model, pending expansion. But with where we sit today, they're going to get in. And I love that for San Diego State, for Boise State, and of course, Oregon State and Washington State. Because you can argue, and I get the money and the dramatic difference between a Big Ten media rights payment and, you know, we don't know what the Pac-12s will be, but it's probably not going to be upwards of $80 million per school. I also think, like, what matters most, if it's winning, I think these two are getting to the playoff. Like, these two schools have a better opportunity to get to an expanded postseason in the revamped Pac-12 than they did in the one that you and I worked for. So there is a silver lining.
Yeah.
And I think as a recruit, it's like, what matters most when you get recruited? Is it winning? Yes. Getting to the NFL? Yes. Check. Is it a degree? I still think it somewhat matters. Is it having family being able to see me play? Like, I think that still somewhat matters. So I think there's some areas where they're going to come out of this thing in a position of strength. I'm not going to argue it much stronger than they were when they were in, you know, one of like the oldest conferences in the history of sport. But the job that Commissioner Teresa Gould did, and so many others behind the scenes have done, like, to say this is what it is, it's amazing when you think about where it was 2 years ago.
Totally. Yogs, and you're more in the weeds on this than I was, because I was gone at this point. But if you would have told me a couple of years ago that this would be the conversation we're having, I'm like, hell no. Like, I still remember when the news broke about SC and UCLA. I think I had texted you. I think you were actually like not far from where I was at that point.
Yeah,
I think you
I was
might have
at the
been doing
Elite
some
11
Elite 11 still. Yeah. It was in Redondo, if I'm not mistaken. Like, by the way, I can't tell you the day of the week. I don't know what I had last night for dinner, but I can tell you that when I heard that news, I knew you were in Redondo with some of those quarterbacks. But I think I even texted you. I was like, I think the league is done. Like, when that happened, I was like, I don't know how you come back. Now, I'm glad I was wrong about it for a lot of reasons, but the fact that we're having this conversation, I couldn't agree with you more. And look, I think Boise was certainly huge on the hoop side. Like, the Zags completely changed the complexion of this conversation. And I take it a step forward because you know this, man. Like, you'll end up going somewhere in the league and they'll talk about, the coverage of Pac-12 and some of the things that we were going to do. And like, which is like crazy to me. And like the most humbling thing, it's just like awesome to hear, like, oh yeah, like we have a great fan base. Like, they are watching, they're paying attention to their respective schools. And I say this to you, and I say this to, all those folks. And if I do radio hits, I say the same thing. Like, we all realize, like, the Pac-12, like, I don't know if it's going to be called the Pac-12 or how many teams are going to be in it. All those traditional rivalries, that's going to happen again. Like, this is not sustainable. Like, when we talk about Cal and Stanford going to Charlotte for ACC Media Days, like, that's not realistic in the long term. There's so much realignment. We're still in the process of seeing how this thing shakes out. I still think there's an NFL model. I still think they keep things, regional, where we get like the traditional, like Pac-12, like we know it, like we covered it. That's going to happen. You'll get your non-conference games where they're like one-offs. I remember talking to a coach at UCLA after they had bounced, and I said, hey, like, how are you feeling about the move? And like, he was like so jacked up for it. And I know he's still excited about the prospects of their ball club and what they can be. He's like, hey man, it's less about us. Like, we're chartered, like we're good. And it's more about some of these other programs. Like, these softball teams should not be going like this. Like, what are we doing here? And that's why I still think the regionalization aspect of it happens in a couple of years.
Yeah. It's interesting in sports and sports media, like what we think will happen, as we've seen, oftentimes doesn't. What we think may happen can blow our minds.
Sure.
And you've lived through a couple of these now. So I want to end with that because you're living one now, and I'm sensitive to it, having lived through one as well around the Pac-12. You're living what seems to be an acquisition of ESPN and NFL Media, NFL Network. I haven't read any legalese, so I don't know all the details, but I do know a lot of humans that work there. A bunch have come on this show, whether it was you or Daniel Jeremiah, you name it. I've worked over there. I've done a couple days on Good Morning Football. Awesome human beings. Rhett Lewis, of course, is part of our crew, one of my dearest friends. Yeah. So how are you navigating life? Because you're on a training camp tour. Like, I'm watching you drive to the facility when you should be at the stadium. I'm watching you do your coverage all over television. What is it like to be you, and how? Because I know your colleagues are showing up for one another as we are literally in preseason games. Like, our boy Guy Haberman calling a real NFL preseason game, like for the 49ers. Shout out to him. But how are you navigating it, and how are you and your colleagues showing up for one another, and people that have become friends and probably pseudo family for you?
All right, first of all, can we just love up Guy for a second here, because he's one of our friends. I mean, I saw the news, and that dude is so damn talented, man. Like, you've worked with him, you know what he's like in the booth. I've done a million shows with him on radio. Like, one of my all-time favorite people. No one deserves this opportunity more. Circumstances suck. He will tell you that. But the point is, like, he will absolutely crush it. Thrilled for him. And I hope there's a lot more run for him in that role. So there's that aspect of it. We had to, because it's Guy. From an ESPN perspective, like, I spent 4 years there. Super, super grateful. There's no way I get the Pac-12 job without the experiences at ESPN. Like, it is an unbelievable place in terms of volume, understanding how to do shows, like what it takes, like how to handle some of the chaos. Like, it's unbelievable. And you're never put in positions there that you will be put in other places. Like, it's simply stated, like, it won't happen anywhere else. But this conversation's been going on for a couple of years. I mean, I've been at NFL Network since, the end of 2020. And, the last couple of years, there's these rumors and rumblings it's going to happen. And we were all just kind of sitting there like, hey, is it going to happen or not? And when that news broke, you immediately, you know it's coming, you know it's a possibility, you read all the reports, but it's still a little jarring because there's so much uncertainty. And, I think, and it's been reported, the regulatory process is going to take a ton of time. We have our assignments for the upcoming season. I'm super jacked up. I get to do, pregame show on Sunday morning. You get to do Monday night postgame. Like, there's all these like really cool opportunities that I know I have for this season. But if there's one thing that I had learned from the Pac-12 experience, which is just like really appreciate the opportunities that you have. Like, I do think back, it's like to the shows that we got to do. And out of the blue, it could be like a Tuesday night, and Yogs will send me a picture of us like on the set where I had like no gray hair at the time, and we look like we're 5 years old, right? God, I missed those. I didn't have bags either under my eyes, but you think about those times, and we had so much fun, and I know you enjoyed it, and I know I did too, but you didn't realize how good you had it until it was gone. And I think I've become more aware of that now, and I love doing the shows. Like, we just did 4 hours at Vikings camp. I'd never been to the state of Minnesota. It was like, they're the nicest people. Like, I couldn't get over how nice everyone was in Minneapolis. Like, to the point where it was like, this is weird. Like, you guys all like this? Like, it was like one of those types of moments, and it was awesome. But like, as I'm flying home, and it's a grind. Like, I don't know how you do it, because you've been doing it for years, like the back and forth and traveling all these different camps and during the course of the season. I do think, like, on the flight home from Minnesota, I thought to myself, like, my God, like, think about what sports, like football, basketball, I've covered a lot of that the last, 15, 20 years. All the experiences that you and I have been able to have because of sports, like, it is wild to me. Like, I got to go to all these different states. I get to meet these great players and coaches and guys that are in the league now or playing in the NBA. And I got to see them when, they were still trying to figure it out. Like, that's like one of the coolest parts. So it's not lost on me. And I think me and everyone else, for example, at NFL Network or the folks at ESPN, I think we're all sort of like, you're nervous, like, you just don't really know. And like, the unknown is like really scary. But I always just say this, man, you treat people the right way. You try to do good work. You try to, like, have an impact on the people around you. Like, we'll figure it out, which is easy said than done sometimes. Cause like, yeah, you have like those freak out moments, of course, cause you just don't know what's going to happen, and the business can be a little fickle, but I have a blast. Like, I know I have this season, and I'm ready to roll, man. And I'm still waiting for the reunion for us, man. Like, I don't know how we get this done, but I'm still convinced it's going to happen.
Yeah. Write that into your next contract. Okay.
Yeah.
But I hear you on that. And I second the gratitude of you being a young kid, me being a young kid on the East Coast, dreaming of playing, dreaming of broadcasting, dreaming of being in these rooms. And here you are sitting next to Kevin O'Connell and JJ McCarthy and many others. And here I am listening to you say, like, yeah, KOC is amazing. Like, love that guy. I remember when he was with the Commanders and maybe UCLA, and like we just have these amazing relationships over the course of time. And the one thing is true is that friendships cut through, relationships are real. And we all have a job and a craft, but there's healthy regard for what that job and that craft is. And that's what the pros do, whether it's Belichick, KOC, you or myself, Miller Moss, Oregon State, Washington State, and everybody in between. So it has been a joy, man. Like, I could talk to you forever. We said, dude, 30, like,
I know,
49.
And because I filibustered the whole time, and I apologize. I'm like, Thornby's sitting there going, how do I edit out some of this and cut down these answers for time here? So, Jim, I'm sorry, man. I've just made your job a little bit more difficult. But seriously, man, we got to make this a regular deal. Like, how do we, like, during the season, I get the newsletter. I'm checking it out. Sometimes I'm on a plane and it pops into the inbox. I'm like, let's go. I was like, this dude, when does he have a moment to himself? Are you kidding me, man? The writing, the game calling, the whole thing, man. Dude, and seriously, I'm proud of you, man. Like, this, I know, to do your own thing, and people don't realize this because everyone is like doing content. There's all these different deals, but like, for what you're doing with Y Option, and I remember having this conversation with you when you were going to start it. It's exciting, it's scary as hell, but you've been able to thrive, man. I see, just all the content that you're doing on a regular basis, and I hope people appreciate the work because you actually care about how it comes out. You're trying to educate the fans, you're trying to entertain them at the same time. But it's scary, man, when you're doing your own thing. Like, that is a scary place to be. And dude, you're knocking it out of the park, man.
I do feel switched on and grateful every day. So I appreciate that filibuster. That was really nice of you. Yeah. I'll make sure we clip that one.
It's true.
Yeah, subscribe, rate, and review, right? As Mike would always sound. Give me a sense podcast. But you're right. I'd love to connect with you more. I think how to navigate the season. I'm a big cold plunge guy now. just got out of one before our session. So come on down to Venice. We'll get you out there. Cold plunge sauna. I got a little spot called Like Minded right at the street. It'll be great. Okay, away we go. It'll get you going. You'll navigate the entire season.
No,
Body composition, head
no.
space, cut out the
Cold,
bad stuff.
dude.
Freezing, 39
No, man.
degrees.
So we live
Namaste.
in no. We live in SoCal now, man. Like we're both from the Northeast originally. You have punted on your Northeast roots, probably a little quicker than I certainly did. I don't need cold, man. Like I don't need snow. I don't
You
need
do.
shoveling. No, I don't. I'm telling you, man. Like I don't want any part. You were telling me about this like 8 years ago, 10 years ago about like taking the cold shower. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm taking a cold shower. I need hot showers, man. Like there's no cold plunge, dude. Enjoy that yourself. I'll have a cold drink. I'll wait for you when you're done, and we'll catch up when you thaw out.
I love that. All right, we'll be tuned into you all season long.
Oh yeah.
NFL Network.
Yes.
Find them Sundays, Mondays, sandwich in between that, the CW with ACC football with our many of our dear friends, and Pac-12 football with many of our dear friends, and then overall football. Like you got a whole lens on the whole thing. You take it all the way through the draft. We'll make sure we'll bring you back on before the kickoff of next season if you give us some time, Mike. But in the meantime, I love you, bro. I love you like family. Thank you for the time once again.
Dude, you're the best man. We have to do this more often than just like before the season. So I'm going to call you out during the year and I'm just going to say, I'm going to invite myself onto your show at some point.
Done and done, as Mike Yam would say. Nothing you can't handle. Big love to our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. They fueled this conversation. They fuel Mike when he drives over to my house, hang out with my family, because we still need that to happen.
Yes.
Lots of love, Yammer. We'll talk to you soon.
You're the best, man.
It's the Afterglow. I'm your host, Yogi Roth. That was Mike Yam. Big thanks to our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go so you never miss a beat. Jim, I know Yam fueled you up a little bit. Jim Thornby is back as well. We got a lot to talk about, but I'm curious, like listening to Mike, I know that does something to you.
Well, it's funny because first of all, I'm going to give him a little crap here on the backside. The reason he knows that Greg Popovich trivia that he threw out there, because Bob Hill, when he left the Spurs, his next job was at Fordham. So I think, that's right. How did Yammer not drop in the Fordham reference right there? I think we're going to have a talk with the Alumni Association about that. Because I know that
Go Rams.
Yeah, there we go. Go Rams. But yeah, it was just it was kind of surreal and just kind of funny. Just that, like it was like you said, it was just old times. And spoiler alert, I'm not really editing any of that out. Like so. And we talked about like, oh, you're making your job hard. You're not making the job hard at all. We're keeping it all in. So, we're good there. But yeah, it was just great because it really was just like old times. Thinking back to 363rd Street back in 2012, 2013, 2014, and so on and so on. So, good trip.
I want to ask you something about that because you started your career. You've worked at a lot of places. You worked at Fox. When that was tracking, you were there for the launch of Major League Baseball, of course, the launch of the Pac-12. So those are like three huge entities in sports media.
Yeah.
And you're a tick older than Mike and I. Tick more experience, one would argue.
Tick, yeah.
Slight, a little slight tick. To that point, do you co-sign or do you like triple down on what he said about like the people or how lucky you are to do it? Like, where do you find yourself looking at, those stops along your career? Because you're not done. Like you're still, to me, I think you're at your very best right now, but you did have like three probably core memories of experiences.
Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, because I was at Fox total for almost 10 years and a different, a bunch of different subsidies of that all thing, but all doing Fox Sports in Los Angeles. And that group there that I started with as a PA in highlights 26 years ago, like that group is still a good portion of my closest friends because you all came into it's the same thing. You all came into that thing together. We have a text chain together that we, a very fondly call the idiots. Because everybody now is there's maybe one or two that are still at Fox, but everybody's kind of all over the different place. Some at NFL Network now working with Mike Yam. So it's kind of funny in that respect. And then same thing with Major League Baseball. I still keep in track with those people, and obviously are from our time together at Pac-12 and the group of people there. And it's funny because even just the little things like when with my son who just in the last couple of years really got into the NBA and playing NBA 2K and stuff like that. We see like Casey Jacobson on one of like the old Suns teams. I'm like, oh yeah, we used to work with him. And my son's like, wait, what? And he's like, so then like he wants to play with that team. Or if like we see like Spencer Dinwiddie and I'll tell him like, oh yeah, I once saw him challenge Mike Yam to ping pong at Media Day. And so like just all those like the random stories are always the ones that you'll really remember and cherish even more so than the things that happened on air and everything else. Just those weird behind the scenes stories that like you're just like, huh, that really happened. You think about like Mike Leach, getting lost at the Harry Potter Museum for Football Media Day. Like, there's those kind of memories that you just, you'll never turn the page on. And those will always be the first thing you think of when you think of those people.
Yeah, that's so well said. I was watching one of the preview shows on Big Ten Network. We're doing these training camp tour shows, and I was listening to Dana Holgerson get interviewed by my colleagues at Big Ten Network, and I was like, the tone of his voice, the temperament of his voice, the pacing. I'm like, it sounds like Mike Leach right now.
Yeah.
Right. Like to your point, like you spend so much time with some people that you're constantly going back to a core memory from that era. And Mike and you and Ash and so many people were core memories in that regard. What is not a core memory necessarily is like your school, Arizona, in the Big 12, right? But that is the core reality in year 2 under Brent Brennan. So let's spin it forward. If you just want to take a look at some of these teams that we're seeing through the lens of the West Coast. You got Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, BYU. There's changes, right? BYU's got a different starting quarterback than they did spring ball. Totally different human, right? Now he's down at Tulane. You look at Noah Fafita and Brent Brennan in year 2. I'm kind of curious as we're looking at expectations around some of these teams. You referenced Cal and Stanford on the conversation with Mike. What have you heard? Like, where do you net out? You were at Big 12 Media Days. You were at Big 10 Media Days. You track all those elements among these teams.
Yeah, well, what I mostly heard was people going, hey, did you get on the wrong bus? Like, which was great. It was great to kind of touch base with friends at the schools and the media from, our old days and stuff like that. But so let's start with the Big 12 specifically. Like, they, after famously last year, Arizona State being picked last in the preseason poll, they did not do a preseason poll this year in the Big 12. So I think that'll be interesting to see how things work with Arizona State, because this year they will be the hunted and not the hunters. Like, you can always have that chip on your shoulder that, hey, we were picked last in the league. And I think it was week 2 or 3 on this show last year where I was like, we might need to have a conversation about who the best team in Arizona is this year. And as an alum, that kind of killed me to say that, but like, turns out like, yeah, we definitely needed to have that conversation because it was not the one that we thought. But I think it'll be interesting to see how ASU handles that this year. I saw, in the first week of practice, and Kenny Dillingham talking about afterwards, like talking about how the team was practicing and that it was not up to the level of what a team like that is going to be. So I think talent wise, they're going to be at that level probably really last year. Like running back, even though Cam Scadaboo is not there anymore, I think they're actually going to be pretty good at running back this year. They got Kyson Brown, they got Kanye Uda from Army. Like, they'll still be good there. They got Sam Levitt at quarterback, they got Jordan Tyson at wide receiver. Like, they're going to be a talented team. There's going to be no question about that. It'll be how do they handle now having those expectations, which is on the flip side for Arizona. There is not really that expectation this year where they had those expectations last year because they had Noah and T-Mac. But football is not a game of 2-on-2. Like, you can't just, roll out those two guys and be like, oh, we're good. Sorry, hitting the mic there. But, how they're going to replace T-Mac, they're not going to have anybody as good as T-Mac in that wide receiver room. I mean, let's be frank about that. But can they be deeper at that position? Arguably, maybe, with that. So maybe Noah will have more options. Noah seems to have a good relationship with the new offensive coordinator. That's really good. When you talk about quarterbacks, you look at Colorado. I mean, obviously not having Shador there this year, not having Travis Hunter in that room for those quarterbacks will be very interesting. how will there still be the same level of spotlight on Colorado just because of Deion Sanders as there has been the last couple of years when you don't have Shador and you don't have Travis? I think that'll be very interesting. Obviously, Coach Prime is dealing with all the health issues this last year. How does he handle all that? I mean, they're still, they have two very talented quarterbacks, but you never know until you actually see them play at that school how they're going to fit in with that. But they're going to have really good receivers as well. And then for Utah in that league was another team, obviously, that was the flip side of Arizona State last year that was picked to be the top. I'm curious if, he'll never say it, and he probably never even thought it, but if Utah would have had a better year last year, would that have been Kyle's last year in Salt Lake? He's the type that's not going to go out like that. But he's also the type that is also not really going to think about, even when everyone else is saying, "Oh, is this going to be the end?" He doesn't think that way. Like his mind is just programmed different than the rest of us of not really putting those kind of expectations on things until like all of a sudden one day he'll wake up and be like, "Oh, this is it. Like we're done." But their offense is going to be fascinating to watch as well because they have the new offensive coordinator. They got the new quarterback. They both came over together, and Jason Beck and Devin Dampier. So it's going to be fascinating because the Big 12 is, I think, going to be just like the Big 12 was last year, where a lot of good teams. Is there a excellent team? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the Big 12 has to navigate what the old Pac-12 did, right? We had Mike Yam on, we went down memory lane. The truth around that era when the Pac-12 networks existed was there was no dominant team for a long period of time. You had Oregon for a minute, you had Stanford for a minute, you had UW for a minute, then Oregon kind of made a little run there late. Like that's just what it was. SC flashed twice, in that decade plus or so. Arizona State flashed for a minute, right? Arizona flashed in the final year in that league. So I think that's what the Big 12 is. And I think it's a good thing that the playoff has expanded and hopefully will expand again because I think college football is a lazy fan base. I just came out of I'll say this. I learned that the average college football fan who loves college football consumes about an hour a weekend of actual games because you got to go pick your kids up. You've got just stuff to do now, and you're diehard Arizona fan, like you're locked in for 3.5 hours. But for the most part, like college football fans, those that love the game, that's what you consume. I think of the NFL. That's probably what I consume on a Sunday, an hour, overall, because I got stuff, I got kids, I got drop off, you got youth games, whatever you have. So that to me is just a reminder that narratives in college football are often lazy, and not in like the lazy make your room, clean your bed because or you're lazy to to my kids, right? Like more of like, you just got stuff going on. So yeah, the Big 12, they throw it all over the yard, like Crabtree, right? And Graham, Harrell, right? Like that's what it is. Oh, Pat Mahomes. Yeah, he was that's just like, I think Baker Mayfield, like not in the league anymore, guys. Oklahoma's in the SEC. I just think that's what the league is. And now because the narrative it's so talented, which I would agree. I don't know. I won't be the guy that I'm not co-signing on they have the best quarterback talent top to bottom. I don't think that right now. They're in the conversation for obvious reasons, but I think a lot of teams will beat each other. So what happens in one-score games? Is Sam Levitt the difference? Is Avery Johnson at K-State the difference? Is Noah Fafita the difference? Is Devin Dampier the difference? Like that's what I look forward to. I think just to piggyback on your notes on those teams, for Utah, probably the most disappointing team last year in college football. Just in terms of, we thought they were going to come in and be the bully in that league, and Arizona was the sexy pick. They struggled. But to be fair and give it context, which is what we do here at Y Option, the amount of injuries that hit that team, not named Cam Rising, were dramatic. So I think they'll come back. I think they'll come back with a vengeance. I'm just so curious what the offense is going to look like. I just think it may take a minute to adjust to what is big-time college football play. We saw it with Max Brosmer. I think it's just a fact when guys come up, especially athletic quarterbacks. Cam Ward struggled, in that regard. Like you think you can outrun a defensive lineman, and it ain't the same type of defensive lineman you played when you were in a different conference. I think it's just the truth. So, Utah, UCLA at 8 p.m. Let's go. Like, can't wait for that first game of the season with Tino Sinceri and Deshaun Foster. We'll get into them next week after I get off the training camp tour. But that's going to be a test for Utah. What's their identity? We know what Kyle wants to do. He wants to run the football and be physical. How do they do that with this dynamic quarterback and his OC? Can't wait to find out. Raved reviews from Kyle about his leadership traits. He hasn't talked about a quarterback like he's talked about Dan Pierre since Cam Rising, which I know was just a year ago, but it was he never talked about anybody at that level. So that I think will be interesting. Let's go to Arizona. I'm just a fan, folks, that I think it's way harder to take over a successful program than it is to take one over that's 1-11. Way harder to take over what Jed Fish did than what Kevin Sumlin did at Arizona. Both equally hard. Not saying they're not hard, but I thought last year my purview was you got to make everybody happy if you're Brent Brennan, because you got to keep everybody. And that I understand, because you're trying to hang a roster together. I felt, and I've known Brent for a long time, we've talked about this, he's been on this show. We didn't get the best version of him in terms of leading a culture and setting the tone last year. I know from talking to him, it is that this year from connecting with players. Did you get that feel at Media Days talking to players, Jim? At
Yeah,
Pac-12 Media
well,
Days?
even just talking to Coach there at Media Day, like, it's, the way I even like was talking with him about it. These were more my words than his, but like each time you're having that change, when Coach Saban retired, and then Kalen goes from Washington to Alabama, and then Jed goes from Arizona to Washington, and each time those moves happen, the portal is opening up for those teams.
That's it, folks.
Yeah, that's it. And you're having to re-recruit all those, but you can now still kind of pick and choose. By the time it gets to Brent and Arizona, those shelves have been picked clean, and you are trying to then make the most of what you have and convince guys to stick around, because there are no really other options for you as the coach to bring anybody in to really compete with them.
Yeah, that's spot on. And I think Seth Dagey in this offense, it's going to feel like Texas Tech, because that's the tree he comes from. I was around him when he was at SC. Big fan of what I think they'll do offensively. I think they will spray the ball all over the yard with accuracy. So look out for them in that regard. Colorado, Julian Lewis, I'm just telling you, man, he's a different type of passer. And from talking to people in Boulder, he might not start, but he's going to play. He was at Media Days. Jim, you saw him there for a reason, right? For a reason. It's not handed to him. Caden Salter should be the guy. Crazy success at Liberty. We were with him at the Elite 11 2 years ago when he was a counselor. But I think Julian's just too gifted to not play. So we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out with them in the Big 12 in tight games. They want a quarterback that can run. Do they want the young passer? Where are they on the offensive line? What are their wideouts like? To your point, they got to replace a lot of productivity in Travis Hunter and company. And then I think finally, just to touch on Arizona State, what has everybody said for 30 years? My 20-some years in California, they've said one phrase. Can you guess how they described Arizona State? You know exactly. No. A sleeping giant.
Yeah.
A sleeping giant. And it awoke last year. It awoke. Kenny Dillingham is not letting this thing slow down. They got a real Heisman candidate in Sam Levitt. I think they have one of the best in the conversation at the very top of offensive coordinators in Marcus Arroyo. He's going to be one of the hottest names in America next year to get a head job. Mark it down. I don't know if he wants it, if he's going to take it. I haven't talked to him about that, but I think he is that skilled on a bunch of levels. I think this thing is rolling. And if they can can you imagine them in the playoff again, year 2? Now we're talking about in this new look Big 12, it's ASU's league. It's nobody's league now because of the mismatch of, the combination of teams from all over the world. But ASU wins it again, and now they start being talked about like, are they going to be like Clemson in the ACC a decade ago? A fair conversation. They got everything they want. They're beginning the process to build an indoor facility. They got a young coach. This is the only place he wants to be. They've paid their coordinators. They're taking care of their players. They can get anybody to transfer in. The place is awesome when it's a game. I mean, the Inferno is off the hook. AD is hot as can be, loves being there. Like, I just think that it's set up to keep going. So that's my take on those schools.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think just to quickly, and we'll expand on these at another time. We'll talk about the ACC schools and the Pac-12 schools for the West Coast. I think the one thing all 4 of them have in common is they need to find the identity for this year.
Yeah,
you look at Stanford and Cal; they haven't had a winning seasons of late. Like, they need to figure that part out to get there. And the Pac-12, like, it needs to not just be a transition year to next year when the league becomes full again, there's talent on these teams, especially a quarterback for both of them. I like both of their quarterbacks a lot, but it's figuring out all the other pieces. A second-year head coach at Oregon State, a first-year head coach at Washington State, at least at those programs. It's going to be interesting as they develop that. So we'll revisit that a little bit later in camp as those things start to come together.
They call that a tease. That means that we're going to get a really good guest that Jim's going to hook up here. All right. Thank you all. YOption.com. That's the place. Give us your email. We're right in your inbox. Also, check out our YouTube channel. It's pretty cool. We're starting to pour into that thing. We're also on TikTok. We're rolling around there. So we're trying to meet you where you sweat. But as always, thank you for allowing us to sweat and pour into you and being a part of our amazing community. For Jim Thornby, Mike Yam, our founding sponsor, 76, I'm Yogi Roth. Stay safe. Stay steady. I'm back on the training camp tour. Peace.